So today's video for Meditation Amsterdam is a small video regarding how we can see ourselves as a sphere. If we can think of ourselves as this sphere of perception that wants to feel complete. So I was thinking about this while looking into yoga and Tai Chi, and I had been reading about how our body is a system that is connected by a single web of connective tissue called the fascia. And certain movements that you do in yoga, these long stretches, they're not really meant to make you flexible, although that is a byproduct of it, right? Of pushing your limit of how far you can do a certain movement along these lines. But what they are meant to do is to activate your fascia, your connective tissue, and sort of give it a nice pull and activate it. But they are also meant to connect it. In other words, the fascia is a single system that runs throughout the body. But for most of us, due to poor posture, such as the one that I am keeping right now, because if I wanted to have proper posture, I'd probably be sitting like this, all right? But that's not a very relaxed thing to do while you do one of these videos. But in essence, due to poor posture and due to also psychological trauma or repetitive activities that we do, physical repetitive activities that we do, our fascia starts to become, you could almost say, petrified or ossified. So it loses its ability to move. And so whereas it should be a single system, the whole body should be a single system that does this when you breathe. And also as you move, when one part moves, everything moves, right? That's a saying in Tai Chi. What ends up happening is, say that this joint over here, the fascia here has become like sort of just stuck, because either you had this psychological trauma or a physical accident, or you carry your posture incorrectly. So there's a stuck thing in here. So the rest of the system now is trying to move as a single thing, but this bit here is just totally stuck. And as we go through life over the years, more and more parts of the system get stuck. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to unstick them through physical exercise. But here comes also the interesting part about it, and that is that it is also unstuck through things like acceptance and forgiveness. Because when you haven't accepted something, it is stored in the body as a contraction somewhere. Somewhere in the body there is a contraction going on that is sort of waiting for a situation to be accepted, for that contraction to be released. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about how the body, you could think of the body as a series of switches, an infinite series of switches that are either on or off. Now, think of what a switch is. Another name for a switch is an interrupter, right? So what you're doing is you have lines of power coming and meeting at a certain point. And what the switch does is it either separates them or it joins them together. Right? So when the switch is on, the lines are joined together and then the energy can flow through. And the human body and the human psyche are exactly the same, are precisely the same. So that for every area in your life that is unresolved, and by unresolved, I don't mean to say that the external circumstances are correct or are okay, but whether you are in acceptance or rejection of that situation. For every area in your life that is unresolved, or every person towards whom or situation towards which you harbor rejection, and maybe even hate, God forbid, right? What you've done is you have switched off that connection, that line. And so, but this is not a figure of speech. It is literally true. So in the brain, there'll be lack of connectivity as a system, and the same will go for the body. So you can think of that as a human being, as a sort of a system where there's all these kinks in the hose, right? So your fascia, your whole connective system, and your mind body system have all these kinks, and these kinks need to be ironed out, right? They need to be softened up and sort of therapeutically worked with, either from the inside out through personal discipline, or from the outside in through meditation, therapy, coaching, life coaching, through massage, or certain bodily therapies such as osteopathy, the Feldenkrais method, Rolfing, right? All these things are working on your fascia, on all this connective system, and the funny thing is that that's why you see that many of these alternative therapies have incredibly quick results. It's because they're tapping into that web directly, as opposed to traditional medicine, which goes like, oh, here's a symptom and it is localized in this area, so we're going to sort of give you medicine here and poke around there. When you instead treat the fascia around the system, suddenly the what was petrified starts to move, becomes mobile again, and the switch connects once again, and that's when energy can once again begin to flow through that system. And it's the same principle that you see in acupuncture. When you place the acupuncture needles, what you're trying to do is you're trying to sort of wake up certain areas of the facial system that have become stale, and the switch is off. So through the needle, you're trying to go like, how about we kickstart this little bit here? We kickstart this channel so that things start to once again move. In the case of the brain and the nervous system, we're talking about just electrical current going through. And in the case of the fascia system, there seems to be something called piezoelectricity, which is a property of electricity contained in crystals, because your fascia system is crystalline. It is made of elastin and collagen, and they create a crystal-like structure, and crystals have piezoelectricity. So that when you do shiatsu or certain types of massages, like acupressure type of thing, where you press a certain point for a couple of minutes, that tension creates the piezoelectricity, and that's what creates the flow of energy once again going through the system of the body. Now, all this story is a preamble to talk about why these methods, the method of meditation, Tai Chi Chuan, yoga, and some of the therapies that I've been mentioning, are all methods that are meant to create an integrated whole out of you as a person. Yeah. So when we talk about there are several kinks in the hose, that means that there are situations which you reject. You are hankering for future things that are going to make you feel better. So that's kind of, in a sense, a rejection of the now, of the current moment. There are things in the past that you resent, right? Or things in the past that you feel guilty, or you have regrets about. So each of those things are a kink in the hose. And when you look at yourself as this big sphere that longs to be complete, what it is it's as if you have this big sphere, but there's all these bits and pieces missing from it, because every time you are rejecting something, there's incompleteness in that system that you are. So that, and then when seeing things from that perspective, it becomes perfectly apparent that that forgiveness, acceptance, and gratefulness, exercising being grateful, is the thing that makes you feel complete, because of another thing that is important to mention, and that is that we think of situations and things and people out there, but in fact, we don't really know what's out there. All we see is we are interacting with our perception, our mental, the mental movie that is played out of whatever is out there. So you are interacting, in essence, always with your own psyche. So when you are hating on something out there, what you're essentially hating on is you're hating on a part of your own system that is rendering that out there. And so you're hating yourself, actually, and that's really stupid, right? And so it brings another whole new light to the sayings of the Bible, for example, where it says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." I used to read that as love your neighbor as one word, yourself. In other words, the way you love yourself, you should love your neighbor. That's not what it means. What it means is love your neighbor as your space self. There is no neighbor. There's something out there for sure. We have no freaking clue what it is. Whatever it is, you're not interacting with. You're interacting with whatever came in through your senses, and then a movie that your brain plays for you in this screen of your visual field and your auditory field and so on. So that's what you're interacting with. So when you hate on something, you're essentially hating on your own, on a movie created by your brain. So you're hating on yourself. And so as long as you are, rejecting situations and people and feeling resentful or regretful and so on, what you do is you create all these kinks in the hose, and the sphere is no longer the sphere that longs to be complete of yourself, of this completeness that you want to feel. It's you are robbing it of its completeness by rejecting things as they are, essentially. This is also another way of saying that that the way to become complete is to fully accept our perceptual bubble exactly as it is all the time, and to love it exactly as it is, because you are in a perceptual bubble, right? It's almost like Neo in the Matrix. You don't know what's out there. All you know is what you are perceiving through your senses. And we tend to believe that the way to feel complete is to change the elements of the movie that our senses are projecting to us. Like, the movie of my visual senses are showing me right now, bad weather, and so I'm kind of feeling down, and I'm gonna move to a place with warmer climate because that'll cheer me up. By the way, it will cheer you up because your body feels that, obviously, but. There's a colleague in my office that I really dislike, and I'm just going to change jobs because I don't want to work with this person anymore. And so we are constantly assessing the movie, the sensory movie in our sensory bubble, and accepting certain things and rejecting other things. But when we do that, we are unconsciously rejecting our psyche, because that's the one that's creating that perceptual bubble. And we tend to think, if only this element of my perceptual bubble was different, then I would feel complete, then I would be happy, my life would feel complete. Whereas in reality, the trick lies in acceptance, in a perfect acceptance and gratefulness for the elements of the perceptual bubble precisely as they are. It's kind of a mindfuck, right? I mean, you think like, I need to solve things to feel complete. But in fact, what you need to do is establish a loving relationship with whatever is happening at every moment in time. And that's what makes you complete, because then you are at perfect harmony with your perceptual bubble, which is yourself, by the way, right? And then the more pieces of that bubble start to become full and complete and loving, the more you start to get this buoyant energy and this big feeling of just like your energy levels start to rise, which is very natural because you've been eliminating all the off switches, and you start to connect all these different things. And then you start to feel like this, very bubbly, very buoyant, creative. Your mood is heightened, and your body feels alive and very healthy. And that is obviously because energy has started to flow through areas in the system where there was disconnect before. Now there is connection, physical connection, but also sort of psychic connection, and they go together with one another, right? So this is, to me, this is a theme in a book that is a little bit too Christian and a little bit too religious in its style for me, which is called A Course in Miracles. But it's nonetheless a very, very important book. And the entire idea behind the book is that you need to make peace with, quote unquote, the world in order to be happy and complete, because there is really no world. There is something out there. We don't know what it is. We only know what our brain presents to us based on electrical impulses coming in through our senses. That's all we know. And we fight with those those representations of our brain. That's what you're fighting with. And therefore you're fighting for your brain, so you're creating a schism in your own, inside yourself, right? In other words, you can never really hate anyone. You can never really regret anything. You can only create a kink within, a kink in the hose, right? So that energy cannot flow through. And so that's the message from today. It is a very self-centered and very egotistic, if you will, vision of morality, in which you love everything and everyone and every situation, past, present, and future, because that's the only way that you can actually love yourself. It is, in fact, in the resolution of external hatreds and regrets and difficulties that we resolve the internal hatreds and regrets and difficulties. It is often said that people that we dislike simply are reminding us of a part of ourselves that we haven't yet come to terms with. Very, very important, very interesting idea, right? It's like, why would you, what's it to you if somebody's dressed like an idiot or going around making a huge, shouting around in the middle of the street? It's like, why are you annoyed by that? The reason you're annoyed by it is because it brings up an area of your psyche that is in a blind spot usually, and they bring it up, and then you go like, ooh, I don't like that. That's stupid. I reject it, right? And that rejection is a rejection of areas of the self that want to be connected and accepted and fully embraced. And that's kind of like the Jungian idea of the embracing of the shadow and these kind of things, right? The embracing areas of yourself that you reject because you are ashamed of what it would mean to admit that you are, that you have had, murderous thoughts or thought about, stealing from the company or, God forbid, or cheating on your partner or things like that. You think that if you admit to those things, that you are admitting to being a bad person, whereas in fact, my Tai Chi teacher was mentioning the other day that thoughts are to a brain like farts are to your digestive system, right? Like it's your brain just putting nonsense out there, and to the degree that you identify yourself with the thoughts and emotions that your brain produces, then you are scared of the ugly ones, whereas in reality you are the present, the conscious awareness that can observe those thoughts, right? So you are not any of these things. And even if you are mentally a monster, you're not a monster, right? You are the presence within, caught in a mind-body system that is monstrous, but it isn't you. It is like a caterpillar. It's like an ugly caterpillar, right? Out of which the conscious self wants to grow. And so the way to do that is to look straight at the sources of unpleasantness and things like that and resolve them and find a way to love them. So you could see it also in terms of almost like a scale, where on the one side of the scale you have hatred, and on the other side of the scale you have, you could say, love. Well, indeed, love or being grateful, right? And so you can hating something is like the worst position. That's when the switch is fully off. From hatred, you can go into like just rejection. Or like, well, this shouldn't be the case. This is super annoying, right? Okay, still pretty bad. Then you could have like just sort of mild nuisance, or like, it's like, yeah, you're just not very, you're kind of blasé, negative about it, right? Then you are totally neutral about a situation. And that is like an amazing place to be. Like if you're really neutral about something that was normally annoying, you've made enormous steps. And or even if you still hate, but you hate for very, very short periods of time, and then you switch that off, like any reduction of the intensity and time on this negative side of the scale is pretty good. And then from hatred you go into like, okay, let's see what I can learn about this, right? And then I was like, oh, curiosity, right? It's like, this situation, it flares up a lot of things when it happens. Like, I want to know why that is. So you start to look into it, and that's already in the positive side of the spectrum because you're investigating. And then from curiosity, you go like, oh my God, this just made me discover that I was totally oblivious to the fact that I feel like this about a certain situation or whatever. And you just, you start to make peace with it. And so from being neutral, making peace with it is like, oh my God, it's like a weight was lifted from you. It's almost like everybody knows the sensation when you've been like fighting with someone and you've been really entrenched in your position, whatever. And at some point you go like, you know what, man, I'm really sorry. It's not worth it. The relationship is more important to me that, just being right or whatever. And all of a sudden, all this amazing energy is released and you feel amazing because why? The switch is back on. You've made that connection. So energy starts to flow once again. And then it feels amazing. And then, when you have that, then you go all the way to like being grateful or loving about it. Love, well, let's stop at being grateful about it, like being really thankful about a situation, all the way from hate to being thankful. And thankful, you can be very quickly thankful if you see the situation as a teacher and you go like, oh my God, man, this really hurts. This is a great opportunity to like, oh, okay, I'm thankful for this that came up. And so that's like super advanced on the other side of the other spectrum. And then love is the absence of otherness. So when you get to the point of love, you are even beyond this scale, because you no longer see another situation or another person out there. The sense of otherness has given way to a sense of unity, in which you don't just think, oh, I will love my neighbor as myself, as myself, but you know that your neighbor is yourself, and that there's nothing out there to hate or even to try and love. It's just you. You're perceiving yourself as you perceive your perception bubble. So that is a video about the perception bubble, in which you're in, the lines of fascia and your neural makeup, and how all that is like a single system that wants to be in completeness and it wants to feel whole, and how body therapies and self-work like yoga, tai chi, meditation, breath work are amazing at helping the body do that. And then you have things like coaching, also meditation to do, to work with the mind part of things. And then you have the cultivation of attitudes, such as forgiveness and being grateful, which what they do is that you can't fake it though. You better mean it, right? It's like, otherwise it obviously doesn't work. But what they do is they take parts of your psyche that are longing to be integrated, that feel separated, and it brings them together, because you accept yourself fully, and you love yourself fully, right? Like you start to almost, I would say, coach your mind body from the present awareness that you actually are. So lately, for example, for myself, if I have anxiety flaring up over a situation or something, I go like, oh, so you feel anxious about this certain thing. It's like, oh man, well, somewhere in your ancestors, some lizard ancestor of yours must have been chasing down an alley, right? And then by a big predator or whatever, and that is what makes this impulse goes like so. Or somebody back in the day, my family maybe got like really mistreated in a similar situation, or maybe something silly and small happened when I was a kid, and whatever it was, it made that element of my mind-body system be constricted. And then when something innocuous happens in the environment, it goes like, and you go like, oh man, but I am not the one becoming like this. I am the one observing the part of the system becoming like this, and going like, you have nothing to worry about. You're fully accepted. I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. I'll accept you. You're fully loved. I got you covered. I got your back, and there's nothing to worry about. And you can feel worried all you want until you feel that the worry or the anxiety has subsided, and then we'll be totally fine. And guess what happens? It just disappears, right? It just goes boop. And maybe with certain things, obviously with certain things I'm still not good. Certain things still trigger me a lot, right? But the path is that one. That's the path. So you start to weave that sphere of the self, and is not through pleasant stuff, but it's through looking into the areas that trigger you and that you reject, no matter how small, and going like, so here's something that I'm not at peace with. Here's something that I'm not grateful for. Here's something that I have labeled as another, whereas in reality it's just a part of my perceptual self that is triggering my emotional self. And my job is to go like, okay guys, what's happening here? So you perceive something and it triggered the anxiety. Very interesting. Okay, well, how about we just observe the body sensation, and everybody here will be all right because I am now in charge. The conscious self is awoken, and it has the ability to deeply observe and integrate these parts of the psyche without having to freak out, because there's enough distance and there's a lot of power behind that the small self or the ego in its little emotional battles and thoughts cannot possibly resolve. You just go down a rabbit hole of thinking and anxious thought and stuff like that. So I hope that is informative as usual, and then I'll be back with more videos. Cheerio. Bye.